The encounter Jack stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the alien soil of Tarim, his boots crunching against the strange surface. His eyes scanned the towering structures around him, their sleek, smooth surfaces gleaming under the twin suns of the planet. This was his first mission in this part of the galaxy, and things weren't going well. The peace talks between Earth and the alien species of the Valtorian system were already strained, and Jack could sense the tension in the air. He was a soldier, not a diplomat, and every part of him felt out of place here in the grand, polished halls of the Valtorian Council. The council hall was enormous. Its walls stretched high, covered in holographic screens displaying alien symbols Jack couldn't begin to understand. Hundreds of Valtorians filled the room, their bodies tall and sleek, covered in armor that glowed faintly, their faces obscured by intricate masks. The air hummed with the low, almost musical vibrations of the chamber, making Jack's skin prickle. The room felt like a place of power, a place where lives were decided with a word, a gesture, or a glance. Jack's mission was clear, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was out of his depth. As a soldier, he had faced countless dangers, on Earth and beyond, but this was different. This was diplomacy. This was politics. The Valtorians didn't see things the way humans did. Their sense of honor and respect was different, their customs foreign and strange to him. He had been briefed on how to behave in front of the council, but nothing could have prepared him for the moment he entered the hall and felt the eyes of the Valtorian leaders on him. The room fell silent as he approached the center of the gathering. His boots echoed loudly, and he felt every eye on him, 1,000 gazes piercing through him. They were watching, waiting. And then, without warning, all the Valtorians around him lowered their heads, bowing to the council leader at the front. Jack didn't bow. He couldn't. He was human, and in his culture, a bow was a sign of submission. It was a sign of weakness. He wasn't about to show that to these aliens. Instead, he stood tall, his chest out, his back straight, looking directly at the council. Leader, his eyes unblinking. His decision felt right, but the silence that followed was deafening. The tension in the room grew thicker. The Valtorian leader, an imposing figure clad in dark armor, looked at Jack with narrowed eyes. The leader's hands rested calmly on the arms of the chair, but Jack could feel the anger radiating from him. The alien's presence was commanding, almost overwhelming, but Jack didn't flinch. He had faced down larger threats in his life. This was no different. Then Jack noticed something. Amidst the sea of bowed heads, there was one figure who didn't lower her gaze. A young Valtorian girl, standing among the older members of her species. She wasn't as tall as the others, nor as imposing. Her face was softer, almost delicate. By their standards. She looked at him directly, her eyes wide and curious, though there was no fear in them. When all the others bowed to the council leader, this girl, Lyra, did something unexpected. She didn't simply bow as the others did. No, she bent her knee and lowered her head, but with a grace and strength that Jack couldn't quite explain. It was different from the others. She wasn't submitting. She was honoring something Jack couldn't understand. He couldn't tear his eyes away from her as she held that position, a moment of quiet strength that seemed to echo in the stillness of the room. Jack's thoughts raced. Why had she done that? Why was she different? And why was he a soldier? So shaken by her simple gesture, he felt the weight of the Valtorian Council's gaze upon him, their silent judgment hanging in the air. He had refused to bow. To him, it was a matter of pride, a sign of human strength. But this alien girl, she had shown him something else. Something that went beyond submission. She had shown him a different kind of strength, one he didn't yet understand. The council leader's voice broke the silence, deep and commanding. Human, you are in the presence of the Valtorian High Council. You will learn respect in our presence. Jack's gaze snapped to the leader. His heart pounded in his chest. The words stung, but he held his ground. He wasn't about to bow. Not here. Not now. The tension in the room only grew stronger, the alien leader's eyes boring into him with a fierce intensity. Jack knew he had made a mistake, but he wasn't going to back down. Not in front of these aliens. But then his thoughts drifted back to Lyra. What was she thinking? Why had she bowed? What did it mean? There was a depth to her action, a story behind it, and Jack realized he wanted to know more. She wasn't just another alien. There was something different about her. And as the moments dragged on, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this would not be the last time he would find himself questioning everything he knew about strength, respect, and honor. As the meeting began, Jack couldn't stop thinking about Lyra. He had come here to negotiate, to fight for Earth's future. But now he realized that his fight wasn't just with the aliens of this galaxy. It was with his own understanding of what it meant to be strong. And Lyra, with her quiet strength, had just given him the first clue. The dilemma. The council meeting dragged on in a blur of strange languages and unfamiliar terms. Jack barely paid attention to the proceedings. His mind kept drifting back to the moment in the hall. He had refused to bow, sure that his human pride was the right thing, but now he wasn't so sure. The words of the Valtorian leader still echoed in his ears, sharp and biting. You will learn respect in our presence. He felt a tightness in his chest as the leader's voice rang through his mind. Jack sat still, his thoughts racing. He had come to Tarim to represent Earth, to show the galaxy that humanity was worthy of respect. But now, after his defiance, he felt like he had lost something. He had thought of his refusal to bow as a sign of strength, a way to assert human pride in the face of the unknown. But now he questioned whether it had been the right move. It hadn't just upset the council, it had upset him. Across the room, Lyra stood among the other Valtorians. She seemed so small, so fragile compared to the towering figures around her, but there was an undeniable power in the way she carried herself. Her eyes never left Jack. It was as though she was watching him, studying him, waiting for him to understand something. What was it? What was it about her that made him feel so uncertain? The meeting ended, and Jack filed out with the others. He didn't speak to anyone, his mind still consumed by the questions that had begun to eat at him. Why had Lyra bowed? Why had she done it so differently from the others? And why did he feel so drawn to her quiet strength? He couldn't let it go. As he made his way to the transport hub, Jack found himself looking for her. His eyes scanned the crowd of alien delegates, searching for her face. It was only when he reached the courtyard outside the hall that he saw her standing alone by the edge of the fountain, her back turned to him, looking out over the alien city. Without thinking, Jack approached her. His steps were cautious, but determined. When he reached her, he paused, unsure of how to start the conversation. She turned her head slightly at the sound of his footsteps, but didn't face him fully. Her gaze lingered on the distant horizon, as if lost in thought. Lyra, Jack said, his voice hesitant but firm. She turned slowly, her expression calm, as though she had been expecting him. She said nothing at first, simply waiting for him to speak. Jack took a deep breath and asked the question that had been burning in his mind since the council hall. Why did you bow? His voice was quiet, but sharp with curiosity. You didn't have to. You're not like the others. Why did you do it? Lyra studied him for a long moment, her eyes reflecting a deep understanding that Jack couldn't quite place. She seemed to know exactly what he was asking without him having to explain further. Do you know what it means to be strong? She asked, her voice soft but steady. Jack frowned. The question seemed simple enough, but it felt loaded with meaning. I think I do, he said, his tone uncertain. I've been in battles, faced death, fought for survival. That's strength, right? Lyra nodded, her gaze never leaving his. Yes, that's one kind of strength, she said. But it's not the only kind. Jack was silent, unsure of what to say. He had always thought of strength as something physical, something that could be seen in the power of a punch or the force of a weapon. He had never considered that there could be different kinds of strength. Lyra's eyes softened. Where I come from, strength isn't just about fighting or surviving. It's about knowing when to fight and when to show humility. Strength is about knowing that you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Jack frowned, trying to understand. So you think bowing is a sign of strength? He asked, his voice tinged with skepticism. It's not about submission, Lyra said, her voice steady. It's about respect. It's about understanding that everyone, even the ones you don't agree with, has something valuable to offer. It's a gesture that shows you're willing to learn, to listen, and to be open. That's strength. Strength isn't just in standing tall. It's in bending when necessary. Jack took a step back, the weight of her words hitting him harder than he expected. He had always believed that standing tall, refusing to bend, was what made a person strong. He had never considered that true strength might come from humility, from understanding that sometimes the greatest power lies in giving. Respect, not demanding it. Lyra continued, her voice calm but filled with conviction. The Valtorian way isn't about submission. It's about honoring the past, the struggles we've been through, and the lessons we've learned. We bow not because we're weak, but because we recognize the strength in others. We bow to show that we are open, that we are willing to learn, and that we are not too proud to admit that there are things we don't know. Jack stood there, stunned by her words. He had always thought of bowing as a sign of weakness, but now he saw it in a completely different light. He thought about the battles he had fought, the wars he had survived, and the pride he had carried with him. He had never questioned it, never considered that there might be another way to view strength. You're telling me, Jack said slowly, that bowing is a way to show strength, not weakness? Lyra nodded. Yes, strength isn't just about fighting, it's about understanding. It's about knowing when to stand tall and when to bow. Jack fell silent, absorbing everything she had said. For the first time since arriving on Tarim, he felt a shift inside him. He had come here to represent Earth, to show the galaxy that humanity was strong, that they had what it took to survive and thrive among the stars. But now he was beginning to realize that strength wasn't just about survival. It was about understanding, about respecting others, and about being open to new ideas. He looked at Lyra, her calm demeanor offering him something he hadn't expected. I think I'm starting to understand, he said quietly. Lyra smiled, a small, knowing smile. It's not an easy lesson to learn, but it's one worth understanding. Jack nodded. He wasn't sure if he fully understood everything she had said, but he knew that this conversation had changed something inside him. He had always prided himself on being strong, but now he was beginning to see that strength came in many forms. And maybe, just maybe, he would be willing to learn more from the Valtorians than he had ever expected. The revelation the next few days on Tarim were a blur. Jack couldn't stop thinking about Lyra's words. Her quiet strength, the way she had bowed in the council hall, and her calm demeanor during their conversation lingered in his mind. Everything he had thought he knew about strength felt like it was being turned upside down. He had always believed that a person had to stand firm, refuse to bend, and fight for their place in the world. But Lyra had shown him something different. Strength, she had said, wasn't just about surviving. It was about understanding, about humility. Jack spent more time walking the city, trying to clear his head. The streets of Tarim were unlike anything he had ever seen before. Alien architecture towered above him, sleek and shining, filled with technology far beyond anything humanity had. The Valtorians, though a peaceful species by most accounts, held themselves with an air of superiority. They walked with purpose, with pride, but their pride was different. It wasn't the type of pride Jack was used to. It was quiet, measured, and strong. As Jack wandered, his thoughts always drifted back to Lyra. He had never met anyone like her. She was different from the other Valtorians. While the others were imposing, powerful, and intimidating, Lyra carried herself with a gentleness that was hard to ignore. She didn't speak often, but when she did, her words had a weight to them that Jack couldn't shake. There was a depth to her, a history that she didn't share easily. Jack could sense it, and it made him curious. He wanted to know more. He needed to understand what made her tick. Why she had acted the way she had in the council hall, why she had bowed, and why she had spoken to him so differently from the others. He had to find out. That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack found himself back in the courtyard by the fountain where he had spoken to her before. It was quiet now, the hustle and bustle of the day replaced by the soft chirping of alien insects and the distant hum of city life. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. He was about to ask Lyra the questions that had been eating at him for days. When he approached, he saw her standing by the fountain again, her face turned toward the water. She seemed lost in thought, her expression soft, almost wistful. Jack hesitated for a moment, unsure if he should disturb her. But then he took a step forward. "Lyra," he said, his voice low but clear. She turned to him with a slight smile, the same quiet, knowing smile that had made him feel both uncomfortable and intrigued the first time. "Jack," she greeted him. "I was wondering when you would come." He couldn't help but be taken aback. "You were? I've seen you walking around the city. You've been thinking a lot, haven't you?" Lyra's eyes held a knowing look, as if she could see right through him. "It's all right. It's part of the journey. You're learning." Jack felt a lump form in his throat. He had spent days questioning himself, wondering if he had made the right choice by refusing to bow, wondering if his pride had clouded his judgment. And now, here she was, calmly observing him as if she already knew the answers. "I don't understand," Jack admitted. "You said that strength isn't just about fighting. But I've always thought that standing tall, refusing to bow, was the right thing to do. That's how I've been taught. That's how humanity is. But now, I don't know." Lyra stepped closer, her gaze never leaving his. "It's okay," she said gently. "You're not the first one to feel this way, and you won't be the last." She gestured toward the fountain, where the water rippled gently in the soft evening light. "Let me tell you a story. A story about my people, Jack nodded, his curiosity piqued. He had always known there was more to Lyra than met the eye. When I was a child, Lyra began, her voice soft and reflective. My people were strong, proud warriors. We valued strength above all else. We believed that true power came from the ability to fight, to conquer, to stand tall against anyone who dared to challenge us. And for a long time, that was true. We fought wars, we expanded our territory, and we were respected throughout the galaxy. Jack listened carefully, the weight of her words sinking in. But then, Lyra continued, her voice growing quieter, we lost everything. The wars we fought, the enemies we defeated, they all took something from us. We were left with nothing but ruins, broken families, and a shattered pride. My people realized too late that strength wasn't just about fighting. It wasn't just about standing tall. It was about understanding. About knowing when to fight and when to listen. About recognizing that true power comes from within, from the heart. Jack stood still, his mind racing. He had never heard anything like this before. The Volturians, with all their advanced technology and military might, had suffered the same fate as countless civilizations before them. They had relied on physical strength, on the ability to dominate, but in the end, it hadn't been enough. Lyra continued, her voice filled with quiet determination. When the war ended and we were forced to rebuild, we realized that humility was just as powerful as strength. We learned to bow, not because we were weak, but because we understood the value of respect, the value of humility. Bowing is a way of saying, I recognize the strength in you. I honor your experience, your knowledge. It's a way of showing that we are open to learning, that we are not too proud to admit that we don't know everything. Jack took in every word she said, feeling a shift inside him. For the first time, he truly understood what Lyra meant. It wasn't about giving up. It wasn't about weakness. It was about strength through understanding. Strength through respect. I think I understand now, Jack said slowly, the realization dawning on him. Bowing is a way of showing respect. It's not about submitting. It's about recognizing the value in others. Lyra smiled, her eyes softening. Exactly. Strength is not about standing tall all the time. Sometimes it's about knowing when to lower your head and listen. To learn, and when you learn, you grow stronger. Jack looked at her, his thoughts still swirling. He had come to Tarim thinking that humanity had everything figured out. But now, after talking to Lyra, he realized that there was so much more to strength than he had ever imagined. He had always been taught to fight, to survive, to never back down. But now he understood that true strength came from within, from the ability to recognize the power in others and to learn from it. I guess we have a lot to learn, don't we? Jack said, a small smile tugging at his lips. Lyra's smile widened. And for the first time since he had met her, Jack saw her not as an alien, but as a person, someone who had faced hardships, someone who had learned from them, someone who was willing to teach. Yes, she said, her voice soft but firm. But that's the beauty of it. We never stop learning. The days passed quickly on Tarim. Jack had spent most of his time reflecting on Lyra's words. He was beginning to understand the deeper meanings behind strength and humility. His days were filled with quiet moments of introspection, and his nights were filled with uneasy dreams of battles fought, of enemies fallen, and of pride lost. He had come here to represent humanity, to show the galaxy that Earth had its place among the stars. But now, with Lyra's words in his mind, he was questioning what he had been taught, what he believed, One afternoon, Jack found himself walking through the Valtorian military complex, a massive facility that spanned miles, filled with towering structures of black and silver. The hum of advanced technology was everywhere, a constant reminder that these people were light years ahead of humanity. Yet, despite all their power, Jack could still sense the quiet sorrow beneath their exterior. They had lost so much, and Jack knew that he was seeing just the surface of their history. As he walked, he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to see Lyra standing there, her eyes bright and serious. There was no smile on her face this time. She looked as though she had something important to say. "Jack," she said, her voice calm, "there's something happening today. I need your help." Jack raised an eyebrow, curious but hesitant. "What's going on?" "There is a training exercise," Lyra explained. "The Valtorians are testing their warriors, their strength, their abilities. We're going up against a threat we've faced before, and I need you to see it. Not as a soldier, but as a person." Jack felt a wave of confusion sweep over him. "A test? For what?" "For understanding," Lyra said. "It's a test of how far we've come, not just in strength, but in spirit. And we need someone who sees things differently. Someone who's not blinded by pride." Before Jack could ask anything else, she turned and began walking toward the arena in the distance. Jack followed, his thoughts racing. This wasn't just a regular training exercise. This was something different. The way Lyra spoke about it made it feel like more was at stake than a simple demonstration of strength. The arena was massive, a vast open space surrounded by alien spectators. The ground beneath Jack's boots was solid and smooth, the air thick with anticipation. The sky above was darkening, and the twin moons of Tarim began to rise, casting an eerie glow over the entire area. As they approached, Jack could see the Valtorian warriors gathered in a circle. They were tall, imposing, their armor gleaming. Under the moonlight, there were no smiles on their faces, no signs of fear. They were warriors, bred for battle, ready for anything. But Jack knew better than to underestimate the importance of this moment. Lyra had asked him to observe, not to participate, and he understood why. The Valtorians needed him to see something, to understand something that had eluded him before. Lyra walked toward the center of the arena, her eyes locked on the Valtorian leader, who stood at the edge of the circle. He was tall and fierce-looking, his armor black and silver, his eyes filled with years of battle experience. He nodded to Lyra as she approached, and the two exchanged a brief but meaningful glance. "Jack," Lyra said, turning to him, "watch closely. This is not just about strength. It's about something deeper." Jack nodded, watching as Lyra stepped into the center of the arena. The warriors surrounding her stood tall, ready for anything. Jack couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement mixed with nervousness. He had seen battles before, but this was different. This wasn't just about survival. This was about understanding. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook. A low rumble filled the air, and Jack looked around, his hand instinctively reaching for his sidearm. But Lyra didn't move. She remained calm, standing in the center of the arena as though the rumbling had no effect on her. From the darkness, a massive creature emerged. Its eyes glowed red, and its body was covered in scales that shimmered like obsidian. The alien creature was tall, its long limbs covered in sharp spikes. Its breath came out in huffs, and its growl echoed across the arena. The spectators gasped. As it stepped into the center of the arena, its eyes locked on the warriors standing in a circle. Jack watched as the warriors around Lyra tensed. They reached for their weapons, ready for battle. But Lyra didn't move. She stood there, calm and unmoving, her eyes focused on the creature. It was clear she wasn't afraid. But Jack wasn't sure if it was because of her bravery or her understanding. Creature roared, its mouth opening wide as it lunged at the Valtorians. The warriors jumped back, their weapons flashing to life. But Lyra didn't flinch. She remained still, as though waiting for something. Jack watched in awe as the Valtorians fought the creature. Their weapons were powerful, capable of slicing through rock and metal with ease. But the creature was strong. Its scales deflected the weapons, and it moved with an agility that surprised Jack. For every blow the Valtorian struck, the creature retaliated with even more force. But still, Lyra did not move. Finally, Jack couldn't take it any longer. Why isn't she fighting? He muttered to himself, his eyes fixed on her. She's testing them, a voice said from behind him. He turned to see the Valtorian leader standing next to him, his expression unreadable. She's testing their understanding of true strength. What do you mean? Jack asked, still watching Lyra. The Valtorian leader's eyes narrowed. Strength isn't just in the fight. It's in how we approach the fight. Lyra understands this better than anyone. She knows when to stand tall and when to bend. These warriors are still learning. Jack watched as Lyra stepped forward, her eyes locked on the creature. With a single motion, she raised her hand, and the warriors stopped. The creature hesitated, its glowing red eyes focused on her. Lyra spoke softly, but her voice carried through the arena like a thunderclap. Enough, she said. The creature froze. Jack stood in stunned silence, his mouth open. He had never seen anything like it before. The warriors, their weapons raised and their bodies tense, slowly lowered their weapons. The creature, now calm, stepped back into the shadows, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Lyra turned to the warriors. True strength, she said, her voice firm but gentle, is not just in defeating our enemies. It's in knowing when to stop, when to listen, and when to understand. Jack felt a wave of realization wash over him. He had thought that strength was about winning, about fighting, about never giving up. But now, seeing Lyra stand in the face of the creature, he understood. True strength wasn't in the fight. It was in knowing when the fight was over, the conclusion. Arena was silent. The creature had retreated into the darkness, and the warriors stood frozen in place. Jack's heart was still pounding in his chest. He had never seen anything like what had just happened. Lyra's calm, steady presence had stopped the battle, not through force, but through understanding. It was a lesson in strength that Jack had never expected. He had come to Tarim thinking he understood what it meant to be strong, but now he realized that there was so much more to strength than what he had known. Lyra stood in the center of the arena, her back straight and her eyes focused. Her peaceful demeanor contrasted with the chaos that had just unfolded. The warriors around her were still catching their breath, their weapons lowered, their expressions a mixture of awe and confusion. Jack could sense that they were all asking the same question. How had she done it? How had she commanded the creature's respect without a single strike? As the silence stretched on, Lyra turned to face Jack. Her eyes were calm, but there was a depth to them that spoke volumes. Jack took a step forward, still processing everything he had seen. You did it, he said, his voice filled with wonder. You stopped them, the creature, the warriors, everything. How? Lyra smiled gently, her expression softening. I didn't stop them, Jack. I showed them how to stop themselves. Jack frowned, confused. What do you mean? Lyra took a deep breath and began to explain, her voice steady. Strength isn't just about fighting. It's about understanding when to fight and when to step back. It's about knowing that sometimes the greatest power lies in not using force at all. I didn't stop the creature because I was stronger than it. I stopped it because I understood it. I knew what it needed. And I knew what my people needed. Jack nodded slowly, absorbing her words. But how did you know? He asked. How did you know when to step in and when to hold back? Lyra's gaze shifted to the warriors who were now slowly making their way out of the arena. Because I've seen it before. I've seen my people fight without understanding. I've seen them win battles and lose something far more important. I've seen them forget the true meaning of strength. And I've seen them learn. Jack's heart ached as he thought about the battles he had fought in his own life. He had always believed that the strongest were those who fought the hardest, those who never gave up, no matter the cost. But now, he realized that there was more to strength than just fighting. There was a wisdom in knowing when to stop, when to listen, and when to learn. Lyra turned back to the warriors, who were now gathering at the edge of the arena. They had witnessed something profound, something that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. Jack knew that they would never look at strength the same way again. They would understand that strength wasn't just about the power to destroy. It was about the power to build, to protect, and to respect. Why did you want me to see this? Jack asked quietly. Why me? Lyra looked at him with a knowing expression. Because you're human, she said simply. And humanity is the key to what the galaxy needs. The Valtorians, the others ... They all see strength in one way. But you, Jack, you represent something different. You're the one who will help us all understand what true strength really is. Jack stared at her, still trying to grasp everything she was saying. He had always thought of humans as warriors, as survivors, as the ones who fought to the bitter end. But now, with Lyra's words ringing in his ears, he began to see humanity in a new light. Humanity wasn't just about fighting. It was about growth, about learning, and about understanding each other. It was about finding strength in humility, in respect, and in the willingness to change. I think I understand now, Jack said softly, his voice filled with emotion. Strength isn't just about winning. It's about knowing how to fight for the right reasons, and knowing when to stop fighting. Lyra nodded, her smile widening. Exactly. The warriors began to disperse, their faces thoughtful, their steps slower than before. Jack could see the change in them. They were no longer the same warriors who had stepped into the arena. They had seen a new path to strength, a path that didn't rely on violence or brute force, but on understanding and respect. It was a lesson that would stay with them forever. As the last of the warriors left, Jack and Lyra stood in silence, watching the fading light of the twin moons cast long shadows over the arena. The night was calm, peaceful, even as though the entire planet had been waiting for this moment. The air felt different, charged with something that Jack couldn't explain. He looked at Lyra, her silhouette framed by the distant lights of the city, and realized that this moment, this lesson, had changed him forever. Thank you, he said, his voice filled with gratitude, for everything. I came here thinking I knew what strength was, but now I see it's so much more than I ever imagined. Lyra's expression softened, and for the first time, Jack saw the depth of her wisdom, the weight of the experiences she had carried with her. "You're welcome, Jack. But remember, this isn't just my lesson. It's a lesson for everyone. The galaxy needs to learn it, and humanity has the potential to lead the way." Jack nodded, feeling a surge of pride for the first time in a long while. He had come to Tarim to represent Earth, to show the galaxy that humans were strong, capable, and ready to stand alongside the other races. But now he realized that true strength wasn't about showing the galaxy how powerful humanity could be. It was about showing the galaxy how much humanity had to offer in understanding, in respect, and in humility. And with that, Jack knew that humanity had just begun its true journey among the stars.